When we upgraded to a bigger house, we thought we were leveling up our lives. Better kitchen, private driveway, quiet street. What we didn't realize was that moving 10 feet away from our old house would put us directly next to something we never should have been near in the first place. And by the time we understood what our new neighbors were really involved in, it was already too late. 3 years ago, my partner and I bought our first home. It was small, but cozy. The street was peaceful, everyone knew everyone. It felt safe. Then, about a year later, the house directly beside us went up for sale. It was larger, 2 floors, garage, driveway, bigger yard. We didn't hesitate. We bought it. Our old house went on the market immediately. It felt symbolic, like we were moving forward without actually leaving the neighborhood we loved. When we chose the buyers for our old place, they seemed polite, quiet. A couple in their early 30s. They spoke limited English and mostly kept to themselves during the paperwork process. Nothing seemed off, at least not at first. After they moved in, the street changed. Not dramatically, just subtly. There would be random bursts of loud music late at night. Not party music, just bass-heavy noise that vibrated through the walls. Sometimes at midnight, sometimes at 3 a.m. Other nights, complete silence. Then came the car. One afternoon, I noticed the husband's vehicle parked outside with heavy damage along both sides. Deep scrapes, crushed panels. It didn't look like a normal accident. When I casually asked what happened, he laughed nervously and gave a strange explanation involving a parking barrier and a truck clipping him. The damage didn't match that story, but I let it go. You don't want to assume the worst about someone living 10 feet away from you. About a week later, we received a frantic phone call from him. His voice was shaking. He claimed 2 men were outside his house, tampering with his cameras. He begged us to check. We looked through our upstairs window. 2 men were standing near his back door. Not sneaking, not rushing, just waiting. We called the police. By the time they arrived, the men were gone. Nothing appeared stolen. The wife returned home in hysterics, rushed inside, and then just as quickly calmed down when she saw nothing missing. It felt staged, but we had no proof. That night, I reviewed our own doorbell footage. The 2 men had been visible earlier, standing in the driveway, talking, laughing. They didn't look like burglars. They looked like they were discussing something, planning, but not breaking in randomly. And here's the strangest part. They weren't looking at the house like strangers. They were looking at it like they'd been there before. A week later, my partner was home alone while I was at a friend's birthday dinner. I received a call I'll never forget. He whispered, "You need to come home." I asked what was wrong. He said, "A car just drove through our garden." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. Our neighbor's car had crashed halfway into our hedge, smashed into the side of his own front entrance, and 2 men were loading electronics into the trunk. Large speakers, flat screens, boxes, fast, panicked. Police arrived quickly this time. They blocked the street. One of the men claimed to be the homeowner, used our neighbor's name. But when the officers began speaking to him in the local language, he hesitated, then switched accents. That's when everything shifted. The men jumped back into the car and tried to flee. The chase lasted less than 5 minutes before they were cornered. 3 arrests, weapons found, drugs, large amounts of cash. While officers were processing the scene, someone knocked on our door. I opened it and froze. It was our neighbor, the real one. His face was swollen, blood dried along his jaw. His arm hung awkwardly at his side. He looked like he had been beaten for hours. The officer stepped between us. The neighbor refused to cooperate, wouldn't give a statement, wouldn't explain anything, just stared at us. Not scared, not embarrassed, just hollow. Later that night, around 11:30 p.m., our doorbell rang again. He stood there trembling. He claimed everything was a misunderstanding, said he had business partners who turned on him. said his wife wasn't involved. Then his story changed, said she set him up. Then he said he never said that. He asked to stay the night. We refused. I offered to call him a taxi to a hospital. He accepted. We watched him leave. Or at least we thought he left. Our dog started growling, low, warning growl, the kind he only makes when someone is directly outside. We checked the camera. He was back, standing on our porch, bleeding through his bandages, ringing the bell repeatedly. Then headlights appeared at the end of the street. He panicked, ran off the porch, and hid behind our cars, crouching, like prey. A woman stepped out of the car, his wife. She walked towards their house, paused, turned towards our driveway. She saw him. We expected screaming, violence. Instead, she began crying. Not normal crying, deep, animalistic sobbing. He never moved. After a few minutes, they both got into the car and drove away. We didn't see him again. 3 days later, she returned alone, collected a few belongings, told us quietly that she didn't think her husband would be coming back. We didn't ask questions. We didn't want answers. Within a month, their house was listed for sale. Cash only, no interior viewings. We didn't attend the open house. We didn't want to know what had happened inside those walls during those loud nights. It wasn't the arrests. It wasn't the violence. It wasn't even the blood. It was how normal everything looked during the day. How easily danger can live inches away from you. How you can share a wall with someone for months and never truly know who they are. We still live here. Different neighbors now, quieter. But sometimes, late at night, when I hear a car slow down outside, I wonder if some things don't disappear, they just relocate. If this story made you think twice about who lives next door, make sure you're subscribed, because sometimes the scariest horror stories aren't about haunted houses, they're about the people living right beside you. I used to think I had an overactive imagination. Every creak, every shadow, every sound outside my window. I convinced myself it was nothing, until the night my dad stepped into the backyard and saw him standing there, watching me. And the worst part? He'd been coming back for years. We moved into that house when I was 14. It was a split-level place on a quiet suburban street, the kind of neighborhood where kids biked freely and everyone decorated for holidays. My room was unusual. It sat at ground level between the basement and the main floor. One wall faced the garage. The other had a wide window that looked directly into our backyard. The blinds were old plastic vertical panels. They didn't close properly. Even when shut, small gaps let you see outside. And at night, when my bedroom light was on, anyone outside could see in perfectly. I didn't think about that at the time. About a year after we moved in, I started staying up late watching videos on my tablet. One night, around midnight, I heard a soft crunch outside, like a shoe pressing into gravel. I paused the video. Silence. I played it again. There it was, shuffling, slow movement. I told myself it was a raccoon or the wind. When I looked toward the window, I saw nothing, so I ignored it. That was my first mistake. Every few weeks, always late at night, I'd hear it again. Not scratching, not branches, footsteps, pausing, then moving again. Sometimes I thought I heard breathing. That part scared me most. But whenever I worked up the courage to look directly outside, there was nothing there. Eventually, I stopped checking. It was easier to believe I was imagining it. One night, I was lying on my side facing my closet. The closet had mirrored sliding doors, and in the reflection, I could see my window behind me. I didn't mean to look, but I did. Through one of the small gaps in the blinds, I saw movement. Not an animal, not wind, a shape, human height, standing still. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I ran upstairs and told my parents. My dad grabbed a flashlight and checked the yard. Nothing. No footprints, no open gate, no sign of anyone. He told me I'd been watching too many horror movies, and I believed him, because believing him felt safer than the alternative. The sounds only happened in warmer months, spring through early fall. When the snow came, everything stopped. That should have comforted me. It didn't. It meant whoever it was choosing when to come. It was early December a few years later. There was a heavy windstorm that night. Around 11:30 p.m., I went upstairs for water and noticed my parents sitting in silence in the living room. They looked tense. Before I could ask why, flashing red and blue lights filled the front windows. A police car pulled into our driveway. My stomach dropped. My dad called me into the kitchen. He told me the truth. About 20 minutes earlier, during the storm, he had stepped into the backyard to check the fence. When his eyes adjusted to the dark, he saw someone standing directly outside my bedroom window, not moving, not hiding, just standing there, looking in. My bedroom light was on. I was inside, unaware. My dad shouted. The man didn't hesitate. He ran and jumped the back fence in one smooth motion, like he'd done it before. The police searched the area. No suspect found, no clear description, no evidence left behind. They suggested installing better cameras. We did, but cameras don't undo years of being watched. That night changed something in me. Every sound I had ignored suddenly felt real. Every time I thought I saw a shadow, I probably had. There was one detail that still unsettles me. My dad went to warn the elderly woman who lived behind us. He knocked on her door. Before he could finish explaining, she shouted at him through the door to leave her alone or she'd call the police. He hadn't even mentioned the man yet. How did she know what he was about to say? Was she scared, or was she protecting someone? To this day, I don't know. A few weeks later, my dad adjusted one of the new cameras. While checking the yard, he noticed something near my window. The bushes directly below it had been pressed down repeatedly, like someone had been standing there often, in the same spot, over and over, not just once, for years. It wasn't a random incident. It wasn't a one-night scare. It was routine. He knew my habits. He knew when I stayed up. He knew when my light was on. He knew when my parents went to bed. And if my dad hadn't stepped outside during that storm, how much longer would it have continued? I switched bedrooms after that. Mine now faces the street, but I still don't like open blinds at night, even in my current apartment, because once you know someone stood outside your window, close enough to hear you breathe, you never fully forget it. If this story made you glance toward your own window, make sure you're subscribed, because sometimes the scariest part isn't what you see, it's how long someone might have been there before you ever noticed. The day we moved into that house, my mom said it felt like a fresh start. New baby on the way, more space, quiet neighborhood. What we didn't know was that someone else had already claimed part of the house, and they weren't ready to give it up. I was 15 when we moved. We couldn't afford much, so when a 2-story house popped up for way under market value, my parents jumped on it. It needed work, the basement especially. The previous owner had started renovations but never finished. Exposed beams, half-painted walls, old carpet. My dad spent months fixing it. Eventually, that basement became my room. It felt cool having my own level of the house. I didn't realize how isolated it really was. About 2 months after moving in, we went out to dinner for my dad's birthday. When we came home, the front door was slightly open. Not wide, just unlocked. My mom froze. My dad grabbed a heavy wrench from the truck and told us to wait outside. Police were called. They searched the house. Nothing. Nothing broken, but small things were out of place. Books knocked off my basement shelf. A kitchen chair slightly moved, subtle enough to question your own memory. We told ourselves maybe we left in a rush. That explanation lasted about a week. Late at night, I'd hear sounds. Not pipes, not normal house settling. Soft thumps, dragging, sometimes what sounded like a cough. The noises always came from the wall behind my bookshelf. It was built into the wall itself, floor to ceiling. I pressed on it once, jokingly. It didn't move, so I dismissed it. One night, around 2 a.m., I was awake playing a handheld game under my blanket. That's when I heard it. A laugh. Low. Quick. Like someone trying not to be heard. It came from inside the wall. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I waited for it to repeat. It didn't. I convinced myself I imagined it, because what else could it be? By then, my little sister had been born. She slept in a crib in my room temporarily while my parents finished her nursery upstairs. One night, my parents went out for a late dinner. I stayed home watching TV. The baby monitor receiver sat beside me. Around 10:45 p.m., I heard movement through the monitor. Heavy movement, not my sister. Footsteps in my room. My heart stopped. Then my sister started crying, and through the static, I heard a voice whisper, "Shh," followed by something falling over. I ran upstairs and grabbed my dad's old hunting rifle. It was locked and unloaded. I didn't care. I just needed something in my hands. I went down the basement stairs slowly. Every step felt louder than the last. The lights were off. My sister was crying. The monitor lay on its side. No one was visible. I shouted that I was armed. No response. I grabbed my sister and ran upstairs, locked the basement door, called my parents. Police arrived before they did. Officers searched the house. Again, nothing. They were about to leave when my dad said something strange. "Did you check behind the bookshelf?" Everyone looked confused. The bookshelf was built in, or at least we thought it was. An officer pushed against it. It shifted, just slightly, then more. The entire shelf swung open. Behind it was a narrow maintenance cavity, big enough for someone to crouch inside. And inside that space, there were blankets, empty food cans, water bottles, a flashlight, and a small folding knife. Someone had been living inside our walls. The cavity connected to a small basement window. It was wide open. My desk chair had been positioned beneath it. The police believed whoever had been hiding inside escaped while we were outside talking to them earlier, meaning they had still been inside the house when I ran downstairs, when I grabbed my sister, when I shouted. They were just feet away, listening. After police left, my parents sealed the hidden space. New drywall, screws, heavy reinforcement. But a few days later, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I pushed at the new wall slightly, just to feel it. Solid. Then I noticed something small near the corner. A tiny drilled hole, almost invisible. I leaned close and realized exactly what it was. A peephole. Positioned directly toward my bed. Whoever was inside that space had been watching me, sleeping, changing clothes, talking on the phone, living. For how long? We don't know. We installed alarms, security cameras, motion lights. The noises stopped completely. No more laughter, no more thuds. But sometimes silence is worse, because it means they know you're aware now. My parents still live there 5 years later. Nothing else has happened, at least nothing they've told me. But I moved out as soon as I turned 18, and I never took the basement bedroom with me. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't something supernatural. It was a real person, eating our food, using our cups, standing inches from where I slept. The idea that someone can exist inside your home without you knowing, that's the kind of horror that doesn't fade. It follows you. If this story made you think twice about the walls around you, make sure you're subscribed, because sometimes the safest place you know might already be occupied.